Most Mario levels are so well designed that even when they're hard, they usually feel fair. But the series is of course not perfect. Almost every game has at least one stage that sticks out for the wrong reasons. Not always the hardest one, not always the most infamous one, just a level I simply enjoy playing the least. So of course we gotta start with Super Mario Bros., and there's two levels in this game built around the same gimmick, and one of them is significantly worse than the other. World 4-4 gets brought up a lot. World 7-4 is the one that actually deserves it. Both are castle levels where going the wrong direction doesn't hit a dead end and turn you around. It loops you back to the beginning of the level and you start over as if nothing happened. Never really understood what this meant for the universe itself. Like, does this bring you into a portal you can't see or move you to a different but identical universe? I don't know. Anyway, 4-4 introduces the idea. 7-4 stretches it into multiple correct path sequences back to back with nothing in the level telling you which way is right. There's no visual difference between the right path and the wrong path. No environmental details or patterns, since this game has about as much detail as the average critical YouTube comment. You're picking randomly and hoping every pick sends you back to square one with the timer still counting down. Maze levels can work when the game gives you something to read. 7-4 doesn't, and it drives me insane. And the reason this is worse than just being frustrating is that the level fails you in both directions depending on what you know. First playthrough, you're going in circles until you get it. If you know the path already, the level has next to nothing, barely any platforming, no interesting enemy setup, just a memorized route and you're out. There's no good version of this level to have. The first few times you play this are going to be annoying because you don't know where to go, and every time after that is just pointless. I know 8-3 is one a lot of people bring up for this game, and I get why. There's like 8 Hammer Bros back to back, and as someone who's not a Hammer Bros enthusiast, like that's definitely justifiable. But I feel like the level at least has like a design intention, even if the intention is just that World 8 is supposed to be punishing. 7-4 is basically just a guessing game, and it's just not fun. I don't even think we need any build up to this pick because it's World C3, and I didn't even need to think about this one. I covered it in my hardest Mario levels video, which you should totally subscribe and check out after. And I also want to separate two things here because they're not the same. Hard and bad are not the same thing. A well-designed hard level earns its difficulty through the skills the game has been building in you. Think something like the darker side of the moon in Mario Odyssey. It's a really hard level, but it never feels unfair. The platforming feels good, and when you lose it actually feels like your fault. Something like C3 is hard because the game removes your ability to see what you're doing in addition to the physics of this game already being less precise than you would normally expect from a Mario game. The whole level runs on souped up springs that launch Mario so far up he disappears off the top of the screen entirely. He's up there somewhere, and while he's falling blind, there's wind pushing him sideways so you can't even guess the landing point. And Lakitu is up in that same invisible space throwing spinies at him. You're just staring at an empty screen waiting to see where Mario comes down and whether there's something to land on. The outcome is almost completely disconnected from anything you did. Like, you can replay this level 100 times and never develop a feel for it. It's just Mario going off the top of the screen and the game deciding where he lands, basically. Also, I think it's interesting noting that the original Japanese Famicom version adds a special bonus. Because Lakitu can spawn spinies indefinitely, if the sprite limit fills up before you hit a certain point in the level, the spring stops spawning, which means if Lakitu is still on screen when you need a spring to cross it, it simply will not appear. The intended version is already blind, but the broken version is even worse. So on top of everything, the original version has a real chance of just quietly falling apart on you. Never actually played this though, but I just thought it was funny to mention. Quick note, I just want to say, these are not meant to be objective picks, these are just my own personal opinions. Not everyone's going to agree with every single one. And also, just to be clear, this is only the mainline Super Mario games, no RPGs, no remasters or anything like that. So I just want to make sure that we're clear on all of that. Insert factoid about Super Mario Bros. 2 being a reskin of Doki Doki Panic. Whoa, isn't that such an interesting fact that has not been brought up by every single YouTuber who's talked about this game? Anyway, Super Mario Bros. 2 actually does try a lot of neat concepts, being a very different type of platformer, but the worst here for me is going to be 6-2. The level is almost entirely a bottomless pit with a handful of tiny platforms, and the way through it is by jumping on the backs of albatross birds and riding them across the gaps. The controls here are pretty stiff, and landing precisely on a moving bird mid-flight is harder than the game seems to expect, especially in the later half where these Jeff Bezos are flying at you and trying to time bird jumps while also dodging projectile enemies, and if you miss the bird, there's nothing below you. Once you do land on one though, the level stops, like you're sitting on a bird watching it slowly carry you to the next patch of ground waiting. Like, this game is usually weird in like an active way, whether you're pulling vegetables or throwing enemies, I don't know, being in a dream, but this is just weird in a passive way. You just stand on a bird and wait for the game to transport you, and you can drop this level into any generic platformer and it would fit. Super Mario Bros. 3 is one of my favorite 2D Mario games, and the fact it clearly learned from the arbitrary design of earlier entries makes it all the stranger that World 7's first fortress exists in it. You walk in and it seems normal, a few corridors, some enemies, nothing telegraphing what's about to happen. Then you hit a dead end. The game expects you to start hitting blocks, and there's no prompt, there's no visual hint, there's nothing in the environment suggesting there's anything hidden. You're you're just supposed to work out that somewhere in this empty looking wall, there's a P-switch. And eventually you find it and a door appears. Through the door is a room with a Tanuki suit, which you probably don't realize you need until you take the pipe back to the first room and figure out why. Then you fly up to the ceiling to find a hidden pipe, which takes you to Boom Boom, who takes about 4 seconds to beat. All this is also under a 200-second time limit instead of the standard 300, probably like as some sort of troll. If you know the route, the level's like a walking simulator, but if you don't, which is any reasonable person playing it for the first time, you're wandering around hitting random things while the clock goes to 0. Like, for a game that has just such expertly designed levels, this one just really feels out of place. Super Mario Land has aged worse than any other game in the series. The controls are stiff, Mario's jump arc feels a little too floaty, and the hitboxes are a little rough. The game mostly compensates for this by keeping the platforming loose and not asking for much precision. Then World 3-3 throws it out completely. It's an athletic level built around moving platforms, which is the exact kind of precise, committed platforming these controls aren't suited for, so you have to jump immediately, except Mario's stiff jump arc in this game makes it genuinely hard to predict where you're gonna land. Super Mario World is probably the most consistently designed 2D Mario game, and even the Special Zone, which is specifically there for people who've beaten everything and want something harder, mostly delivers on that. I feel like Groovy's fast and chaotic with a lot of moving enemies, Mondo's a long grinding slog through a giant level, Outrageous is a wall of bonsai bills the whole way through. Besides having very 80s names, I actually really do like a lot of these levels. Yes, they're brutally difficult at times, but they're testing skills you actually built playing Super Mario World. Tubular has almost no ground anywhere. The intended way through is with a P-balloon, which turns Mario into someone's internet search. You steer with the D-pad, and the level is packed with baseball chucks and volcano lotuses trying to knock you out of the sky while you're trying to control this thing you use maybe twice in the entire game. You can get through it with a cape and a blue Yoshi, which is what most people end up doing, but in the intended version, you're asked to suddenly master a mechanic the game barely introduced. The best way I can explain this is the Special Zone is supposed to be the final exam for Super Mario World, and Tubular feels like the final exam for one mechanic the class barely covered. You could have played every other level in the game perfectly and still be completely lost here. I also just don't think the design of this is particularly fun, and even though this is a level most people aren't going to play, it's just the one I found the least enjoyment out of. Star Course in the Space Zone might be the most boring auto-scroller in the franchise, and I say that having played through a lot of Mario auto-scrollers. Everything's in low gravity, so everything moves slowly, and you're weaving around angry stars that feel pretty arbitrarily placed while the level inches forward at a pace that makes it feel longer than it actually is. Mario's usually fun because you control the pace. Star Course takes away the pace, lowers the gravity, and then doesn't replace that missing control with anything. It's just slow enough that there's almost no danger, which would make it easy, and it does, but also means there's nothing to engage with at any point. The low gravity elsewhere in the Space Zone at least changes how you approach the platforming, but in an auto-scroller where you're just dodging things, it mostly just drags. Tatanga shows up as a boss at the end, which is a cool callback to the first game, but the fight isn't interesting enough to redeem what came before it. When I was going through 64 trying to settle on a pick, the star I kept coming back to was Tower of the Wing Cap. I know it's an early game level and most people clear to move on, but this star I hate more than anything else in the game. And also, this goes for this and the DS version. The Tower of the Wing Cap is accessed from the main lobby of Peach's castle. Once you have 10 stars, you go on the carpet next to the stairs, look up, and you're just transported to a sky tower where Mario spawns already flying as Wing Mario. There's a central tower below you with the wing cap switch on, and 8 red coins scattered in pairs at 4 compass points out in the open air. You need to collect all 8 before the wing cap runs out, or you just fall. The weird thing is that this is also supposed to be your introduction to the wing cap, but instead of building up to flight gradually, the game immediately makes an 8-coin precision test in open air with no checkpoint and no room to learn. And that wouldn't be that bad if the wing controls actually, were good. I don't even know how to explain this, but anyone who's played this game probably agrees with me. It just feels like a pain actually moving Mario around in this level. Like the wing controls just fight against you, and in the DS version, it's no better. And having to get a small coin in the space when you have to just make these turns, it's not the hardest thing in the world. Like, you will probably be able to do this within a few attempts, but it's not enjoyable when you're fighting against the controls in a platformer. I know a lot of people will pick something from Rainbow Ride, but being honest, I actually don't hate most of the Rainbow Ride levels, so that's why it's not my pick. Sunshine has enough well-known bad moments that narrowing to one requires actually going through them, so I want to do that before actually making my pick. Corona Mountain, the final level, is a lava boat ride where you're steering with FLUDD, and it's just deeply unpleasant, but it's short and most people get through without losing many lives. It's bad, but contained, I guess, if there's any way to explain it. The Lily Pad ride is much closer. It's a Delfino Plaza hidden shine where you're riding a leaf boat over instant kill poison water, collecting 8 red coins, and the leaf slowly rots away as you stand on it. So FLUDD has to handle both steering and keeping the boat stable simultaneously, which it just does not feel precise enough in this game. And then if you get a game over, you have to do the annoying step to reach the level again from scratch. The mechanics are imprecise, and the penalty for failure is just disproportionate, if there's any way to put it. It's a miserable level, but I guess it's not the worst to compare to what's next. The Pachinko level wins because you have almost no control Takeover. It's accessed under a bridge in Delfino Plaza near the cannon and boathouse, and you enter to find yourself suspended in a cloudy sky in front of a giant Pachinko machine with 8 red coins inside. Now, I actually think the concept is cool here, but the launcher shoots you in and then the physics take over, and the physics in the machine are completely broken. There's like an invisible force pulling you towards the center of the board, so coins on the left side are disproportionately hard to reach. And the slopes and bumpers interact with Mario in ways that feel completely unpredictable. You bounce off a peg and end up somewhere you didn't expect, and it feels like there's no way you could actually choose where to go here. And at the bottom of the machine, there's an opening where you fall through, which drops you back into Delfino Plaza, where you have to wait for the boat and ride it back under the bridge to try again. I feel like every time someone calls Sunshine unfinished, this level is what they're pointing at, because it feels like the physics here and the layout, or really the lack of checkpoint, is something that could have been patched. New Super Mario Bros. On DS is a pretty gentle game from start to finish. Like, I finished this game when I was 4 years old, and I don't really have a problem with that because I think there's some challenging levels here. But I feel like World 8-7 is the most frustrating level here. Like, Hammer Bro levels are just not fun to me. Some of them aren't the worst, but I just feel like the way their design gets old fast. They bounce on blocks and throw hammers that arc in a way that's hard to read, and most of the time you can't just run past them without taking a hit. This level takes Hammer Bro variants like Boomerang Bros, Fire Bros, Sledge Bros, and runs them across moving platforms for its entire runtime, one after another on terrain that's shifting while you're trying to line up jumps. Being honest, this may not be the worst level in the game in terms of design, but I feel like the level design here is pretty consistent. Like, there was nothing that really stood out as just being bad, unless I'm just completely forgetting one because it's been a few years since I played this. So let me know in the comments on this. So unlike New Super Mario Bros. DS, well, I'm not super confident in my pick. This one I didn't think about for a second. So there's quite a lot of stars in Super Mario Galaxy, and I know a lot of people hate the ball rolling stages. I know a lot of people hate Bubble Blast. I know a lot of people just hate the motion control levels, but you know what? I don't. I actually like some of these levels. The level I do hate the most is Dreadnought's Garbage Jump, which is a hidden star in Dreadnought Galaxy. To reach it, you have to be mid-run on the Revenge of the Top Man Tribe mission, finding a warp pipe on the underside of the starting UFO, and when you go through it, there's a platform where Guillermo is standing next to a pile of trash. He gives you 30 seconds to blow it all up with bombs. The bombs have a short fuse and only one spawns at a time, so the next one won't appear until the previous one is already detonated. So you're picking one up, aiming, throwing it at a trash pile, and just watching it blow up. There are gold markers on the ground showing you optimal throw spots, and once you find those, the timing becomes tight but doable. But the problem is, every time I've done the star, I've cleared most of the trash, and it feels like there's always just one piece left. I just hate this level with a passion. I feel like you need to be absolutely perfect, and if you mess up a throw even by a tiny amount, you have to start over. This and the carrot level and Bowser's Inside Story were the bane of my existence as a kid. For New Super Mario Bros. Wii, I feel like it's kind of similar to DS, where it has pretty consistent level design, but World 8-4 feels like someone said, what if Underwater Mario was also hard to see? And everyone just thought that was a good idea. It's a mostly underwater level set in a dark cavern, and the whole thing is lit by bulbers. They're anglerfish enemies that glow and light up the area around them, and also jelly beams which float through the water as your main light source. I feel like navigating by creatures that are also threats is actually an interesting idea, except in practice it mostly just means you're squinting through murky corridors while Cheep Cheeps and Stone Spikes are working in the dark. Stone Spikes sit on platforms above the water and throw spike balls down at you while you're swimming, as you're dealing with visibility problems and overhead projectiles at the same time. Darkness is annoying in any Mario level, but underwater it's worse because you're already moving slower and correct mistakes slower. It's also the only level in World 8 without any midpoint, which in a world full of late game difficulty is a notable absence. Far from the worst level in the Mario series, but probably my least favorite here. For Super Mario Galaxy 2, I know a lot of people hate Fleet Glide Galaxy or the Ball Rolling Galaxy here again, but you know what? I low-key kind of like those levels. My least favorite here, and one that I was very happy to see Shea Frills Productions agree with me on, is the Silver Stars level in Stone Cyclone Galaxy. This is remixed from part of Beach Bowl Galaxy in the original Mario Galaxy, and I don't think it's the worst thing ever. I think it's just kind of a boring design. I don't think there's anything too interesting going on here. So I really don't know why Nintendo of all things brought this back. And it's not even like this level is just brutally difficult or anything. In fact, I would say the most difficult thing is just slowing down time and just waiting. Like, that isn't fun to just have to slow it down so you can wait for the hollow part of these thwomp things, whatever they're called. There's just nothing I like about this level. The design is boring. The concept is boring. It just drags on and it's nothing new. I don't even really have much else to say about this, but this was my first thought of the level I just simply enjoyed the least. 3D Land is the safest 3D game in the series. Every level is designed to be approachable, and there's not really that many new ideas tested here, which means finding the worst level is kind of like finding the worst cup of warm water because they're all roughly the same temperature and none of them are really memorable enough to stick. But of course, one has to be that pick. If I had to pick one, I guess World 5-3. It feels like the level was assembled from leftover parts, like moving platforms, power Goombas, flop hoppers, gap spikes, and that's it. Nothing is broken here, but nothing feels that interesting either. Like, a bad 3D level is rarely painful, especially as we've gotten better controls in the series, but it's just forgettable in a game that already plays things extremely safe. I don't even really know how to explain this one that much, but it's just the one I feel is just kind of boring. I don't think there's any levels here that are that hard to the point of just being frustrating and being a bad level, so that's gonna be my pick. I know Special World 4-1 gets brought up as the actual worst, and I get why, and you know that's a totally fair pick, but for me, I'm just gonna go with 5-3. New Super Mario Bros. 2 is my least favorite game in the New Super Mario Bros. Series. I just think a lot of the levels here are kind of boring. I think that they're uninspired, and I don't think there's any that gave me a satisfying challenge. Well, except for the Impossible Pack DLC. I also don't really like the ghost houses here. They kind of work as puzzles in these games. You often have to figure out like what doors, right, where to go, if there's like a secret exit or something. World 6's is a maze where you press question mark switches to make doors appear and then figure out which one leads forward and which ones loop you back to earlier rooms. First time through, you're guessing. There's a section mid-level where a big boo is standing over a hidden question mark switch, one you have no reason to know is there, and you have to lure the boo away from its position to press it. The big boo moves when you're not facing it and freezes when you are, so you're slowly backing towards the switch while keeping your camera on the boo, and you only find out any of this by wandering the room long enough to stumble across the switch in the first place. The best ghost houses make the wrong path feel like a joke the level played on you. This one makes the wrong path feel like you pressed the wrong button in a menu. When you finally find the exit, it doesn't feel like you solved anything. It just feels like you guessed enough times and it worked. New Super Mario Bros. U gets written off as just another new game, which I think undersells it. The level variety here is a lot better than some of the other games. Soda Jungle has a lot of character to it, and if it had launched alongside a console that actually sold well, I feel like it would be better remembered than it is. Deep Sea Ruins, though, is the exception to all of that. It's Soda's Jungle 5, the last level in the world's haunted sub-area, and it's an underwater level where the main platforms are large stone eye statues that move slowly. The whole level just has a sluggish pace because of it, and the second half is a straightforward swim through a dark corridor with boos floating around in it. The whole thing just has the energy of a level you forgot you played while you were still playing it. The problem, though, is the exit. The normal exit loops you back to an earlier point in Soda Jungle, basically a fake ending. You finish the level, and the game sends you backward unless you found out the secret route. So it's not like it's just forgettable, but it's mandatory too. You have to find the secret exit to continue through the world, and that wouldn't be such a bad thing if this level wasn't so cryptic and boring to play through. 3D World is actually a really well-designed game. The thing it does better than most Mario games is it just keeps the creativity moving. Like, every level seems to introduce something and move on before it outstays its welcome. And even the levels that aren't doing anything especially new are fun to run through. Rammerhead Reef is one that forgot to do any of that. It's a water level and world castle built around cycle waiting. Rammerheads and obstacles move in patterns, and you hang around waiting for a gap to swim through. 3D Water has water levels that still feel playful. This one found the slowest possible version of the game and committed to it. And a game that actually has a really good pace. This one just feels kind of off. And that's not entirely a bad, but I feel like it doesn't really compensate with anything interesting to look at or any clever use of the underwater space. It feels like being stuck behind a group of people walking super slow that you just can't get around. I think it's probably one of the better, worst levels in this game because it doesn't actively work against you or anything. It's not a guessing game, but if the whole game was like this, we would have some problems. Next is Super Mario Run, which admittedly I forgot to even put in this video in the first place. I have not played this game in a long time. I don't think I have any reason to go back to it, but thinking about the worst levels in the game, I think I'm gonna go with World 6-3, throwing it all overboard. There's nothing inherently wrong with this level, but it just feels very slow. It doesn't keep the Super Mario Run pace where you're running, meaning that it's just a lot of stopping and just waiting to do a wall kick to go back and get a purple coin. I don't really know what else to say about this one. There might be some I'm missing, so comment if there's just an awful level. And I also know that there's some of the black coin levels that are really difficult, but I don't think those are necessarily bad. I think the challenge can actually be a little fun. Odyssey has like 880 power moons, and with that volume, some of them are just going to be filler. I think the game kind of earns that trade-off. The overall density of things to find is a big part of what makes it feel so good to explore, and if some of them are thin, fine. Like, a lot of these just require you to ground pound or do some very simple tasks, and yeah, I wouldn't exactly say they're fun, but they're not annoying or bad or anything like that. The jump rope moon in Metro Kingdom gets a lot of discussion here. One of the moons requires getting 100 jumps in a row, and the rope speeds up significantly around 50, and around that part, it can get pretty brutal. There's a scooter trick that makes it a little more manageable. Then beach volleyball in Seaside Kingdom is probably worse if I'm being honest. Also 100, but it's harder to cheese. Cappy's aiming isn't always reliable enough to sustain a rally that long, and every failure costs more time because the setup takes longer. However, even though I don't love either of these, I think it's incredibly rewarding to actually get these moons. The coin coffer moon in the Wooded Kingdom is just a different problem entirely, because it doesn't have you do anything skill related. You find a specific plant deep in the area, capture a coin coffer enemy, and spit 500 coins into it. You hold the button until 500 coins come out, which takes a couple of minutes. At no point is there any challenge or decision involved. You literally just stand here and wait. It's also completely non-obvious. Like, you have to know this plant exists and that 500 coins is the number, which means first playthrough most will either look it up or miss it entirely. Like, at least the volleyball, the jump rope, like, you know what to do. At least those have some skill involved. But what exactly is the point of this? They couldn't do like 100 coins or something. They needed to do 500. I don't know. It's just a very odd design choice. For Bowser's Fury, I'm going with 5 lost kittens in the wasteland. So this is not difficult. Literally all you do is just find these cats, pick them up, and bring them to the mother cat. And yeah, it might be heartwarming, but at the same time, I just didn't enjoy this. Like, there's no challenge to it. There's nothing interesting here. It's literally just picking up these cats and moving them somewhere else. Like, it's not like you have to do any difficult platforming with them. It's not like you have to solve any puzzles or anything. It's not really bad in the sense that it's that frustrating, except it is a little frustrating to sometimes just wander around to try and find them. But it's just bad in the sense that just feels like a filler star that you kind of just want to get over with. Wonder is the best 2D Mario game in years, and the Wonder Flower mechanic is creative, the level variety is great, and even the harder stages are fun to push through. The search party levels are the weak point, and an empty park is the worst of them. Search parties are levels where you hunt for wonder tokens hidden throughout the stage, and some of them work because the environment gives you visual clues about where to look, or the searching has some sense of play to it. An empty park, as the name says, is almost completely empty. The tokens are in invisible blocks scattered throughout the level with no logic to their placement, no visual language telling you where to look, nothing to read. You jump around randomly until something appears. In multiplayer, people can spread out and cover ground a little faster, which makes it more playable. Alone, you're just guessing. I kept waiting for the moment where the angle of this level would reveal itself, and it didn't. And that is the worst level in every Mario game, in my own humble opinion. Of course, not everyone's going to agree with every single pick here. People have their own things that they dislike in Mario games. But let me know, what are your least favorite Mario levels in the comments? Be sure to check out some of my other videos here. Come join my Discord and subscribe.